Welcome back to Puddle of Porridge, where today we're going to be covering part 2 of our Guild Wars 2 Catalyst builds. These are building on our Elementalist training wheels builds. So if you've not watched part 1, be sure to check that out first, because there's going to be some information in there that is going to be helpful to this specific build. So without any further rambling, let's head on over to Lion's Arch Specialist Training Arena and we'll get started, shall we? Here we are in the Specialist Training area, and we're going to look at our second training wheels build. So obviously these all build up from our core Ellie build, but this time instead of focusing on auras, we're going to be focusing on our Jade Sphere. Now, I'm going to highlight the Jade Sphere here, and eagle-eyed people will be able to see that it looks quite different than it did last time. Still has the same basic setup, but we have a lot more bonuses coming off this thing already. So let's go over our traits and I'll explain the bonuses as we go. First off is Energized Elements. Energized Elements is absolutely great. Gives us Fury when we switch elements. You can't go wrong with this one. This one is just a nice little buff to our character by doing a thing we're doing in the build anyway. It's great. Next up is Spectacular Sphere. Spectacular Sphere is the linchpin of this build. What this does is it gives us additional boons for those within our Jade Sphere's radius, and gives it a bigger radius as well. So universally, we gain quickness across the board. So whatever attunement we're in, we gain quickness and we're attacking faster as long as we drop that Jade Sphere down on us. Doesn't matter what element it's in, we're still going to be attacking quicker. In Fire Attunement, we gain 5 stacks of might, and that is in addition to the 1 stack of might it already gave us. So that is 6 stacks of might. This is going to help us keep that might up way quicker than it used to. Not only that, but because we're hitting that max stack of might quicker, we can spend more time playing with the other Ellie attunements, with whatever weapon we're using. The other offensive one is Fury, and if you remember our air elemental stuff usually gives us Fury. We're just getting more Fury. So more Fury uptime means we're going to be critting more, and that's also going to increase our damage. But I think the real MVPs here are going to be the support attunements, because these can get you out to some really tight spots. Your water attunement is getting vigor, so we're not only getting resolution, but we're getting vigor, which can stack nicely with evasive arcana, as it allows us to dodge more. We can get the benefits of this trait if you want to swap over to it. It'll also stack nicely with Bountiful Power, because we are just going to be applying boons to ourselves left, right and center. So if we're looking back at other aspects of this build, you might want to alternate between these two depending on how much time you want to spend in water attunement. Our final attunement is Earth, and that is our last supportive attunement as well. In Earth we get Aegis, which is so good for Ellie. Ellies are usually so squishy, so not only are we getting protection, but we're getting Aegis, which is a free block against any attack. That's really good for an elementalist. The way these all work together is really powerful, and it's hidden away in Catalyst. It does take a bit of investment if you're just entering into the elite spec, but it's well worth it for spectacular sphere. Finally, we have sphere specialist, not as important. So if you get this trait unlocked first and don't have sphere specialist and you want to try it out and you want to stick with staunch auras, fine, you can do that, but just be aware that sphere specialist increases boon duration by 100%. It doubles our boon uptime, so you're not quite going to get the time that you're used to here. You're not going to quite get the same effect with some of these boons from Spectacular Sphere. But once you get it, if we look, we have some really high uptimes with these boons. We're not spec'd for boon uptime in any other way. And the important one here is quickness. So if we click this off, we only get 3 seconds of quickness. It's not that long. It's enough for you to notice, but not long enough for you to take full advantage of. Sphere Specialist, you can take full advantage of that. 6 seconds is a long time in game time. And you are going to be attacking so quickly. That means that our fire attacks are going to come out really fast. We'll be building up that might even quicker. We'll be dishing out those lightning attacks even quicker. These three together are very powerful. And just to add an additional bonus to this, if you're playing alone and you don't have players around you, these buffs apply to allies. See the number of targets? 5. If you're in a regular raid group, well, not raid group, but you're, say, doing strikes with this build, which I've done strikes with this build before, you can help buff your team. Especially if you are finding that someone doesn't have a lot of quickness uptime, you can really take on that role, or at least practice taking on that role in some more casual groups or with guild groups. I wouldn't recommend this in more experienced groups, obviously, unless you've spec'd towards this. But you can keep that quickness up on your group quite comfortably with your Sphere Specialist. But this also applies to our minions as well. So if you want to, you can now have the choice of, if you're staying at range, apply them to yourself or your minions, or keep within the range so that your minions and your character can get the full benefit of all of these boons together. This not only helps keep your minions alive, but it helps keep you alive. It not only helps your minions deal more damage, it helps you deal more damage. You'll find things melt away quite quickly when you get in the rhythm of it, but it's getting in that rhythm first. That's the trick of this build. So here's our standard golem. It's our usual affair. We've got a nice defiance bar on him. This is around about what you'd deal with in the open world, apart from dealing with things like legendaries and particularly tough champions. But let's do a quick little demo of how this works, how all these traits are going to line up together, right? So I'm going to summon up our minions. Just want to demo these quickly as well. And we're going to start with the attack. Now, we're not doing so great with the build-up, but we're going to drop down our Jade Sphere. Look how quickly that just built up to 25. That was near instantaneous because we were attacking so quickly, and we got the 6 stacks. We just got all of that lined up, all those ducks lined up in a row. Now I'm going to switch to air attunement here. As I do, I'm going to get a big old buff of fury. Look at that, nice big fury, so we're critting all over the place. Now, what I want to demonstrate here is I'm going to highlight this little elemental here, and I'm going to drop down the Jade Sphere. I'm going to watch those boons appear on the elemental. So, whoop. A nice long fury uptime on our elementals, and they have quickness, so they're attacking quicker. We also have fury up time before we switch back over to fire, and just basically up that straight right the way back up to 25. Obviously, as we're switching through our elements, we're also gaining more fury, so we're keeping that fury up as long as possible with this build. So it's now a balancing act between keeping our might high and keeping our fury high, which we can actually do quite effectively. Like, look at that. We now have 29 seconds of fury, and we're keeping our might around about 25 until we balance out like we have now. So we got 25 stacks of might and about 18 seconds left of fury before we even focus on switching through attunements again. And that's basically the build. Once you've got that down, you can go back to doing what we covered in the first video, where we focus on more specific things like dropping down the defiance bars of your opponent, things like that. Obviously, we have the more defensive abilities here. We can drop down Jade Sphere to give us protection and Aegis. Water, same thing with our Vigor and Resolution, which have not laughable uptimes. But obviously we want to go back to doing what we always do. We stay in fire, build up that might, which we can do far more effectively, and now switch over to air again and really get those crits out, because we can now crit again like we could in before, and just keep cycling through our elements where appropriate. And that's it. That is the build. But as an added little bonus, this actually really does work well in staff, and I'll show you that in just a moment. Now, staff works a bit differently. See, when we were up close, we could really benefit from the Jade Sphere, and our minions could benefit from the Jade Sphere. But if we're using staff, we want to stay at a distance with staff, because that's what we like to do with staff. So it kind of becomes a choice of whether we want to buff our minions or buff ourselves. Usually it's going to be buffing ourselves, because you'll see why in a minute. But if you want to, the option is always there to make your minions stronger. I'm going to summon up a lesser elemental here, and I'm going to start attacking. Now, if we look, our might is crawling up very slowly, but we drop that Jade Sphere down ourselves. We've got a big buff, and we're attacking with quickness. So we see our might go up near enough at the same rate as if we were using Scepter, unbuffed. So that's a huge bonus for using staff with the Jade Sphere build. Now, the other bonus here is that we can now just siphon through our attunements and get a lot more out of it. So if we drop over to air and deploy the Jade Sphere, now we still have that high fury uptime. And then we swap over again. Maybe we want to apply this over there to our minions, over here, onto ourselves, then back onto fire. And we have to build up that energy again to drop it down on ourselves again. And we just keep building that up, working with our abilities as we go. At ranged with a staff, we're actually much more capable of dropping this down on us to trigger the appropriate augment ability, right? The thing is, if you keep that up, you're going to run out of energy very quickly, but it does increase over time. So it's more these big bursts while we can, and it'll give us a nice long might buff that is only slowly now decreasing to normal levels. And oh look, our Jade Sphere's up. We start the whole thing again, right? We are buffing away at the Jade Sphere. And we can still take advantage of a little bit of mental epitome with our free stuff here before switching back over to Staff Fire, dropping it back down, building up to max stacks of might again, and the only time we need to really leave Fire attunement is when we run out of Fury. We want to get that Fury back up and we can keep it chugging along for a while. Soar area, we can get that up to around about 20 seconds at the least. And that's it. That is the rotation of this build. You can apply what we applied earlier and chip away at that Defiance bar. For example, in Earth, we can start chipping away at Defiance. We have a lot of soft CCs mobilize on Earth. Same with water, we have a little bit CC and water. So these are always helpful for dealing with those pesky Defiance bars. But other than that, the build is very simply, we apply as much Fury as we possibly can to ourselves, and we drop into Fire, build up all that might, and then start the rotation over again. While balancing might with the Fury, and if you want to, deciding whether you want to buff yourself or your minions, which will always be attacking at the same time as you. That's it. It's the simplest expansion on the core Ellie build, but it's also the last one you're probably gonna get, which is very annoying, but still. And there we have part 2 of our Catalyst build. Hopefully, between part 1 and part 2, this has satisfied what you need out of a beginner-friendly to intermediate-friendly Catalyst build. Like I said, part 2, this Jade Sphere build is what I firmly believe is the better build, but you really don't get that stuff until later on, and the auras are a very good way of kind of bridging that gap between core Ellie and what you can do with the Jade Spheres later on. If you've stuck around and enjoyed the video, once again, do the usual YouTube things, the likes, the shares, the subscribes. I'm a really small channel, really helps me out, and I've been getting a lot of positive feedback about the content of these builds lately, so thank you very much for those who've been sharing that and letting people know. It absolutely means the world to me. If you have any constructive criticism or feedback that I can do better, please don't hesitate to leave that for me as well. I genuinely do take all of this in and work with it wherever I can. There are more videos coming up in the future. The next one's a bit of a surprise, so hopefully you'll see more of me soon. Thank you once again for sticking around. It's great. You're great. Have a beautiful day.